Well, turning to financial advice, and a further 505 advisors left this industry this quarter. That's according to the latest Advisor Ratings Musical Chairs report. The number is predicted to decline by a further 2,000 by 22, as the FASEA results are to be released. To tell us more about the exodus is Angus from Advisor Ratings, and he joins us live in the studio. Angus, great to have you in. So let's drill down a bit more into the detail of those numbers. I mean, compared to what we've seen previously, are they high?
They're pretty subdued this month, but we are anticipating, just with one exam left for financial advisors to sit before the exodus, before the 31 December date really comes into play, that's going to accelerate between now and the end of December, which is not great, obviously, for those that are needing advice, as the supply is obviously diminishing every day. Demand is at its greatest, and as we come into 2022 with all the uncertainty around bond yields and what have you and what's going on there, I think, you know, the SMSF community in particular is going to sort of start to reach more for financial advisors, and there's just going to be that lack of supply coming into 2022. So it's not great, but we'll see what happens come 31 December to see what that final number is come 1 January.
Of course, there has been a massive shakeout in the industry.
Yep.
Do you feel as though we're reaching a point where there's a bottom? Because potentially investors will suffer here if they're not getting adequate advice.
Well, that's exactly right, and I think the government is aware of this. They're loosening the strings a little bit. You know, out of the pandemic, they had the record of advice, which was changed from the statement of advice in terms of, and I think that's going to be a long-term play for the government to start to rely on. You're seeing AMP, IOOF, and recently, this week, Commonwealth Financial Planning. So the last bastion, the banks have finally exited. So CFP advisors going over to AIA. So you're starting to see a lot of these, I guess, advice firms starting to look for new business models, because the demand for advice is actually greater than ever.
So where is that balance then between getting a good amount of compliance and the right exams in place, but also providing a service that everyone needs?
Well, I think that's the issue that's sort of, I guess, burdening the industry at the moment, is finding where that balance is trying to, I guess, is there boundary testing that needs to happen in terms of licensees going, well, where can we go in this market in terms of giving clients what they want without the exceptional massive costs that are actually being imposed on the licensees, and also in terms of basically providing that consumer protection that obviously was born out of the Royal Commission. So you're seeing that you're trying to find a balance out of the last 2 or 3 years, and unfortunately because of that, we're now going to see like 40 to 50% of advisors basically exit the industry from the industry highs of December 2018. So it's a real conundrum, I guess, that's facing the industry over the next sort of 2 to 3 months especially.
So what is the actual purpose then of increasing those regulatory burdens, you know, lifting compliance? I mean, obviously we want to weed out advisors who just don't, you know, meet that those requirements. But is this a day-to-day problem that, you know, it's all very well sitting an exam, but have they got to sort of, is this a day-by-day, week-by-week thing where they've got to sort of check all the compliance boxes, and it's much more onerous than it once was?
There is, and I think the government is aware of this, but you can't probably do anything in the short term given the legislation that has just been passed, and to see what the washout is. We saw this in the UK, I guess an overshoot from the government. And you know, no displeasing my government friends here, but obviously an overshoot from the government, and then sort of a wind back in terms of a relaxing of some of these sort of, I guess, compliance issues or burdens that they placed on the industry. So I think we'll start to see a loosening over the next 6 to 12 months, especially as the outcome of what's actually been, you know, shown through over the last sort of 12 months is really comes to bear on the industry, and really comes to bear on this advice gap that's really starting to appear.
Well, I guess the point is, has it had the desired effect? What their objective was to perhaps weed out the dodgy advisor?
I think there has been a mix. Yes, I do think at the end of the day, some advisors have left the industry by virtue of the fact that some of the compliance issues, they were never going to tick that box, which they should have ticked. Unfortunately, though, it's wrapped up some good advisors in the mix too. So I think I answer that by sitting a little bit on the fence with splinters to say that yes, there has been some consumers protected in this whole thing, but at the same time it means a lot of consumers are going to miss out on getting actual affordable advice. But that said, I think you're going to see new business models spring up over the next 12 to 24 months, especially as the government starts to relax sort of some legislation around general advice.
And do you have a good dialogue with ASIC when it comes to talking to them about what is happening on a day-to-day basis?
We do have a good dialogue with ASIC, APRA, Treasury, all of those sorts of organisations in terms of providing them the information as to what's happening on the ground at the coalface. So hopefully it's feeding through and sort of we'll start to see some changes over the next sort of wee while.
And are you anticipating there's going to be the smaller advisors that are winners out of this rather than the big perhaps institutions?
Well, I think so. I think the small advice firms are going to probably be a little bit more liberal in how they tackle compliance and the burdens on them. I think they've got the ability to be far more agile when it comes to decision making, when it comes to introducing technologies into their practices and what have you. So I think they're going to be far better placed in terms of offering that gap that I was talking about for consumers.
So where do you think innovation lies in the space then?
Oh, it's interesting. There's a lot of innovation coming out. There's a lot of technology coming out. Some will survive, some won't, as we all know. But I think the innovation's definitely going to come down to that scaled advice element in terms of how do we get the more. So there's been a huge uplift in millennials, Gen Ys, sort of interested in advice, interested in money out of the pandemic. So I think that's where the sort of technology is going to play in that sort of, I guess, that under 45 bracket. And then it's up to the advice firms to adopt it. So there's a lot of technology that's out there. It's just basically getting up the gumption and the confidence to bring it into your organisation.
Angus, thanks so much for joining us from Advisor Ratings.
Thank you very much.
Angus.